Welcome back to Buy or Sell, the series where you pitch me your predictions for the theme park world, and I either buy or sell them and explain why. If you want your idea considered for the next video, leave a comment below starting with buy or sell. In this episode, we look at the B&M hypers that may be in danger, what's next for Fun Spot Atlanta, and what's going to fill the gaping hole at King's Dominion after tearing out Anaconda. This is Buy or Sell, episode 39. First, I want to thank my Patreons and my new member, Justin Maybach. If you want bonus access, bonus content, behind the scenes videos, a shout out when you join, and your name on this fancy Patreon screen, follow the link below and join. Let's start with Not a Time Lord 21. In the next 10 years, Cedar Point will get a Woody in Frontier Town between Millennium Force and Maverick. This area isn't technically in Frontier Town. That starts right where Maverick turns around, but it's close enough, and this area would be great for a wooden coaster. From the turn out of Maverick's launch tunnel, all the way to Millennium Force's first overbank. The one problem is Thunder Canyon, the Rapids ride. You would have to rip that out, and having just lost Snake River Falls, and Shoot the Rapids having come and gone, you can only take out so many water rides, so I'm selling it. I don't hate the idea of a wooden coaster. The park could use a modern Woody. They currently only have Blue Streak, and that's the oldest coaster in the park. A GCI Twister would be very popular here, possibly something from the Gravity Group. But Cedar Fair and GCI work well together, and their CEO is in charge of the new Six Flags chain. There are two other plots I think are more likely, but they would involve tearing out other coasters. I'm talking about Cedar Creek Mine Ride in the old Snake River Falls area, and also the Gemini plot. Those would give a wooden coaster plenty of space, and I think those coasters may be in more danger. Coaster Juice. Gold Striker has moved to Carowinds, Cedar Point, or a smaller park in the chain. If you don't want to build a ground-up wooden coaster at Cedar Point, why not move one of the great ones that needs a new home? Great America is going to close in the not-so-distant future. They have a top-tier GCI, but moving a wooden coaster is kind of a no-go, especially one this size. It seems like wooden coasters used to move around a lot more than they do now. You see the likes of Comet at Great Escape, Phoenix at Knoebels, Skyliner at Lakemont. These are big wooden coasters that got moved around in the 70s and 80s. We're about to see Switchback at ZDTs get sold and move somewhere else, but that's smaller and makes a lot more sense. Gold Striker is 3,200 feet long, 108 feet tall, a sprawling layout. I'm selling this, finding a new home. Even though this would fit like a glove in Cedar Point and Carowinds lineup, both parks needing a modern wooden coaster very badly. Moving wooden coasters of this size doesn't seem like an option anymore. Cedar Fair could have moved Villain at Jaga Lake, only 7 years old when the park shut down, but that was scrapped. Same with Ozark Wildcat, only 5 years old when that got torn down instead of finding a new home. I don't know why they used to do this, and now it doesn't happen, but it's too bad. Loop-de-Loop Adventures. B&M hypers will need serious refurbs in the next 5 years with their age. We've already seen a couple B&Ms need to be torn down and rebuilt. The Hulk at Islands of Adventure and Nemesis at Alton Towers. There are older B&Ms, but the number of cycles plays a role here, as well as how much stress gets put on the track. B&M hypers are big and fast, and it seems like they may end up in the same boat as Hulk and Nemesis. The first hypers came back in 1999, Apollo's Chariot and Raging Bull, and unlike some of the older B&Ms, like Vortex at Carowinds or Firebird at Six Flags America, these parks aren't going to think twice about saving their star attractions. All B&M hypers are popular, they're crowd pleasers, everyone loves them, they're reliable, and in 5 years, the first hypers are going to be as old as Nemesis when that got overhauled, so I'm buying this. It may not need a complete teardown, but don't be surprised to see Six Flags America or Busch Gardens replace a bunch of track segments over the next 5 years. The Hypercoaster Guy. In the next few years, Lightning Ride receives a high-speed cable lift like Skyrush. When Dollywood confirmed the launch would be gone and they'd replace it with a high-speed chain, some of us were optimistic. It wasn't going to be as good, but if the chain was fast, the rest of the ride could still be great. I got the Dollywood to ride the new Lightning Ride in 2024, and it was disappointing. The sadness of that lift hill was one thing, but I do think the first half ran slower than before. Dollywood does have the funds to change from a chain to a cable lift, something like Skyrush, where you go from the station to 200 feet up in about 2 seconds, and you could see the argument for doing it. The cable lift would have still been a big disappointment after that launch, but if you get everyone used to a chain and then start using a cable lift, people will be way more impressed. This may be giving Dollywood too much credit, this 4D chess move being too complex, but even though I'm not ruling it out, I'm selling it. They invested a lot of money turning this into chain rod. The ride seems to be open more often now. It still draws a big line. They'll probably leave it be. Gemini Fan 20, Mr. Single Rider, It's All Good, Coaster Guy 15, and Bobby McDess Jr. King's Dominion replaces Anaconda with a Vekoma. I had a ton of Anaconda questions, so I'm just combining them into one. Back in 2020, I started my What Will Replace series, and the very first episode was for Anaconda. I was so convinced this ride was on its way out, and I had to wait a couple extra years, but alas, here we are. Anaconda was torn out at the end of 2024, right before Rapterra gets ready to open nearby, and that new B&M wing plays a big role in what will replace Anaconda, and when. Rapterra is their biggest addition since Twisted Timbers in 2018. This park doesn't get new coasters too often, so if they were going to replace it with a big ground-up thrill coaster, that may not be until 2030 or later. I think an extreme launch Vekoma coaster made the most sense here, and it still makes a lot of sense, but given Rapterra is a launch wing coaster, will they really get back-to-back launch coasters? It doesn't seem like it. But a new ground-up coaster isn't the only option here. Ever since Great America was announced to be closed, I felt like Cedar Fair would send Railblazer to a park that wasn't quite low tier, but not so big that capacity would be a problem. King's Dominion stood out as the perfect landing spot. Now that the chains are merged, I think Discovery Kingdom makes more sense. But let's see if Railblazer fits on the Anaconda plot, at least the land that doesn't go over water. That plot is 481 feet by 87 feet, and Railblazer is 259 feet by 92 feet. That's an easy fit, and you don't even have to worry about underwater footers. If Great America closes after the 2027 season, that's one scenario where you can get an early replacement by relocating Railblazer. If they wanted to get a large raptor like Jersey Devil, that runs 622 feet long. And if you expand the plot from the pathway in front of Flight of Fear, all the way to Racer 75's big turnaround, that's 633 feet. Just barely big enough. So, therefore, I'm selling Vekoma and putting more stock in RMC. If it was Vekoma, and they don't want to go with a launch coaster, they aren't going with a Bermuda Blitz or a Wildcat, not with Pantherian right there. But they may go with a flying coaster. I could see that, launch or no launch. It could take a while, but it would be worth the wait. Big C. If Quantum Accelerator at Six Flags New England is successful, that will open the door for more Intamins at Legacy Cedar Fair parks. I maintain that all 2025 editions were agreed on before the merger, so Quantum Accelerator was a Legacy Six Flags coaster, and not something Richard Zimmerman signed off on. We know Cedar Fair has been avoiding buying new Intamins, adding them like crazy up until I-305 in 2010, and that was the last one. It does seem like a concerted effort to work with other manufacturers, and now that Zimmerman is in charge of the whole chain, I see no reason why this freeze-out won't continue. That being said, I'm buying this, but only for smaller coasters like this. Maybe Zimmerman hates Intamins so much he doesn't want to give them anything, or maybe he wants to avoid the big, innovative, problematic rides, but a tire launch family coaster is just fine. There are other companies that can give them the same thing, but if Intamin is competitive, which I imagine they are, which is why Six Flags went with them in the first place, I doubt the new chain backs away from the best family launch coaster at the best price. Jackson Bachman. All Legacy Six Flags parks moving to IROC will halt operations for at least a year. For those who don't know, IROC stands for International Ride Operator Certification. Cedar Fair used it. Six Flags is rolling it out now, and it's basically a 10-step method of ride-op safety, teaching how to check restraints, a whole new set of hand signals, how to scan before dispatch. And the reason for all this seems to be so the chain can cover themselves legally if something happens. They can point at the IROC training and it may help them in court. I've been reading some accounts from people at parks who have used this in the past, or are currently doing it, and it definitely seems like it slows everything down. So, for the parks using it for the first time, I'm buying that you'll see a difference. It sounds like it's slower in general, and then you're adding in the fact that it's brand new to these ride-ops. That sounds like a good combination for the classic 5-minute dispatch. Disney and Universal have stayed away from this, and the reason seems to be speed. They need great capacity, so they're opting to risk the lawsuits and keep their throughput at a high level. Hockey Guy 66871. Steel Curtain's massive overhaul permanently fixes it, and it lasts another 20 years. Turns out, all the rumors were true. Steel Curtain had to shut down because of a structural problem. It had nothing to do with the lift or brakes. In the past, I wondered how a simple coaster could have so many problems, but now we know the ride needed more supports. They are putting those on this winter, expecting to be open for the season, hoping they can save their massively expensive investment from 2019. The question is this a permanent solution or just a band-aid? I'm sure the intention is to make this permanent. You can only add so many supports until the train can't pass clearance, so this change is make or break. I think this year the ride will run as planned, but in the future, the question is, can this plot of land support a coaster this size, no matter how many supports they put on it? And I have to sell this coaster being around for 20 more years. Maybe this buys the coaster 3, 5, 10 more years, and it will get to the point where there's nothing else they can do but shut the ride down for good. I don't know enough about the problem to know if the problem is the land, or if the structure wasn't good enough at first, and now it's rock solid. But I'm leaning toward the land being the main problem, and that's not good for the long-term prospects of Steel Curtain. Comet Comics. Six Flags chooses the Wild Moose as a replacement for the Kid Flashes. I don't know if those Kid Flash coasters will ever reopen, but I think we're done seeing them being added to the chain. Skyline hasn't been good to Six Flags, but RMC has, and the Wild Moose offers a slightly larger scale of a compact family coaster, so I'm buying this. As I've said before, the old Cedar Fair CEO is in charge now, and Cedar Fair was never about flooding their parks with clones. However, they seem to be more inclined to cut and paste family coasters, and we could see the Wild Moose be their new go-to family coaster. They were burned by a prototype in the past. Maybe they shy away from another one, or maybe they wait until someone else buys one, then go all in on the Wild Moose. They may not be as pretty as the Kid Flash coasters, but I think it has more of a mass appeal. Burger Truck. Frontier City gets a new thrill coaster in the next 5 years. Honestly, Frontier City's big problem right now isn't their next new coaster, it's staying in the Six Flags chain. They already said they wanted to pare down the number of parks, but given the fact they don't own this park, only operate it, I don't know if it does them much good to leave this park behind. They haven't done much for this park since taking over back in 2018, only giving the kids area a facelift. But if Six Flags stays on board, or if another operator like Premier Parks or Palace takes over, do I really think they're getting a new thrill coaster in 5 years? No, I'm selling this. They haven't gotten a thrill coaster since 1993, that being Diamondback. Just the family coasters, Steel Lasso and Frankie's Mine Train over the last 32 years. So, if by some miracle they do get a new coaster, it'll probably be family friendly. And if, by an even bigger miracle, I'm wrong and they do get a thrill coaster, it'll probably come at the expense of Diamondback and will be a Raptor or a Skyrocket 2, just something small, skinny, and cloned. To Epic Dev. Funspot Atlanta will either get major investments to come, or permanently close. When Funspot Atlanta announced a major RMC iBox coaster, it caught everyone off guard. Everyone knows about Funspot Orlando and Funspot Kissimmee, but that Funspot outside Atlanta was an afterthought, operating since 1990, having 2 coasters, both relocated from E&F Miler, a high miler and a kids coaster. Once Air Force One was announced, we wondered if this was the start of a new era for Funspot Atlanta. They had the space, they had the will. Would this become a park that would rival Six Flags Over Georgia only a half-hour away? Air Force One is one of the country's top coasters, but it doesn't seem like it's worked out all that great for the park. By all accounts, the ride is always a walk-on, and it'll probably take a long time to see a positive return on that investment. It would be kinda crazy to put in more major investments if one of the best coasters ever didn't seem to move the needle. But the park has also been around for 35 years, so I don't see why it would close down. I'm selling this. I think the park holds steady, keeps the status quo. Maybe they accept what they are and don't try to be anything more. Furina. Airtime Thrills reaches 100,000 subs before Falcon's flight opens. There are so many factors here that could decide this race, but right now we're both on track to get there at the same time. Six Flags Qiddiya is set to open in late 2025, and at my current rate, I'll get to 100K by the 4th quarter of 2025. I post 3 or 4 times a week. You never know if I'm gonna have that viral short, or if my Epic Universe videos will take off and I get a rush of subs, or if my channel totally drops off and my pace gets cut in half. Who knows? As for Falcon's flight, even if Six Flags Qiddiya opens this year, maybe Falcon's flight has problems and gets delayed till next year. You know what they say, always bet on yourself, so I'm buying this. I think we're starting off tied, but I have more upside. More things can go right for me, and more things can go wrong for Falcon's flight and Six Flags Qiddiya. So, help me out. Give me a sub if you haven't. Tell a friend. Please, I'm desperate. That's a wrap on episode 39. Let me know what you think about any of these topics, if you agree or disagree, and why. Also, don't forget, if you want your idea considered for the next video, leave it in the comments below, starting with buy or sell. Before you go, don't forget to drop a like, and if you're new here and love coasters, please give me a sub. I have a playlist with all the buy or sell episodes. Also, check out my second channel, where I post copyright-free off-ride footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.